Hey guys, wanted to apologize for coming to you a day late, but we just wanted to get the trade deadline in this episode just in case some crazy stuff happened, which it did with the Cavs getting a whole new team. We also get into the greatest day in my sports life, which was the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and if we think they can repeat. Also, a little bit of Jimmy G talk and how bad Josh McDaniels did the Colts. Again, we're everywhere. You get your podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Castbox. So if you like what you're hearing, subscribe and give us a rating. We also have a Twitter page where you can keep up with the show and what's coming up on the following week's podcast. The handle is at BSing with S, the letter N B. That's again at BSing with S and B. And without further ado, episode 6. Welcome to episode Bonzi Wells of BSing with SMB. I'm Sean, and this is Brian.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey Brian, how you doing? Pretty good weekend, don't you think?
I got caught up on my sleep, I watched a pretty exciting Lyoto Machida UFC fight, and that's about all that really happened. So, yeah, it wasn't a bad weekend.
All right, so because Brian's being a jerk, let's do our Super Bowl review. What'd you think about the game, bud?
Well, it was definitely the most exciting Super Bowl I've ever seen. It's everything that NFL football usually is not. I mean, you had a pretty up-tempo, spread-out game, a lot of big plays all over the place. Like we mentioned, both of these teams, they incorporate some college concepts in their offense, and it's no surprise that these were, largely two of the best offensive teams in the NFL throughout the year, even with, Napoleon Dynamite playing quarterback for the Eagles. And the difference in the game was the Eagles' defense was able to step up and get a stop when they needed it the most, and the Patriots' defense certainly was not able to do that because it looked like Swiss cheese the entire game.
If it wasn't for Alshon Jeffrey throwing an interception to the safety that caught, I don't even know what Brody's name was, but if it wasn't for him throwing that interception to him, do you think that game could have got out of hand? Didn't they go up
I
three
think.
scores?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you still have Tom Brady, so I think they would have continued to score and keep him in it, but I don't think it would have been as dramatic down the stretch as it was. To me, yeah, that big fumble or interception there, which was a pretty good play by I always mix up. I always want to say Darby, but Gilmore. But that strip sack by the Eagles, that was the game right there. I said to you, it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last, because I was not anticipating that great strip sack there. So it was a good game to watch. I mean, and I guess Nick Foles proved just about everybody, well, specifically myself, wrong. I mean, I guess he can play a little bit.
I tried to tell you he had the juice, Brian. I tried to tell you.
I
told
couldn't.
him.
I couldn't get the Rams stench out of my mouth and him getting fired on Hard Knocks.
I tried to tell you that was a Jeff Fisher problem and not a Nick Foles problem.
Yeah,
all three of his quarterbacks were in the playoffs this year, and all looked pretty daggone good throughout the whole season.
I know, how bad of a coach is he? Like, my goodness. And it was a fun game to watch, though. Is that the most exciting? I mean, obviously you're a little biased, but is that not like probably the most exciting NFL postseason game we've ever had?
I mean, if you take away the ending to the Vikings game, then yes, I would say so. From start to finish, I mean, it was points everywhere, scoring in 41-33. I mean, you had yards up and down the field. It was the most yards ever in a football game, not in just a playoff game, just in a football game in the existence of the NFL. So, I mean, LeGarrette Blount got to stick it to some people, rushing for 90 yards, had 2 big carries. One for 36 yards, and I think his touchdown was for like 21 or something like that. I mean, everybody on the problems that we said across the board that they were going to have problems with is exactly what they struggled with. I mean, I figured the Eagles would be a little bit better when it came to as far as receivers, doing better on the receivers. They were just letting them run willy-nilly through the secondary. But like we said, they couldn't stop Gronk, and we knew that was going to be a problem. But I think a big thing in the game is that it showed up how bad the Patriots D-line is. They weren't even able
Oh
to,
yeah,
sniff Nick Foles, even breathe on him to make him be affected to, throw a pass fast. But yeah,
yeah. I
go
mean,
ahead.
Bill Belichick finally kind of outsmarted himself. He went through all these years of getting rid of his talented, guys in the front seven, Jamie Collins and Chandler Jones, and at the end of the day, you have to generate a pass rush, regardless of how good your secondary was. And everyone wants to shout about him not playing Malcolm Butler. I don't think he changes the game. I mean, he might make a play or two or PBU, but it's not like he's going to keep the Eagles' offense in checks. So it's just like you said, it's the front seven. They couldn't generate a pass rush. Eagles have a great offensive line. We knew that, but that just only highlighted just how terrible the Patriots' front seven was.
Today, while walking in the parade or seeing the parade go by, I saw Doug noticeably having like a limp because of his balls. They're they are huge. Oh my God, that fourth down call. I know it's come out since then that Foles was the one that actually made the call, but just the fact that he would go for it there, and he's like, man, we're here, we're gonna go for it. There's no other way you can beat the Patriots. I mean, you just gotta go put balls to the wall. And that's what he did. I mean, all throughout the game, even towards the end, when they had that, me and my cousin were looking at each other like they're really about to go for it on their minus 45 with like 5 minutes left in the game. He's sitting there because he's like, I mean, it really doesn't matter if you give up a touchdown there because you're still down 5 points and, you're still going to have to score. I mean, you haven't been able to stop the offense the whole time. So, yeah, I thought that was, really, really interesting that he was, super aggressive like he was all season.
Yeah, and I wish more coaches would do that. I mean, do you have enough confidence in your offense to get a single yard or hand the ball over to the best quarterback in modern football history? I mean, like you said, they knew they had to score to win, especially with the way the game was going.
Nick Foles had the ball already.
Oh, yeah, my mistake. Second best quarterback in modern football history. But, yeah, I mean, it was fantastic to watch. I mean, the trick play was amazing. Once again, there was a play call stolen from the college ranks. Oklahoma ran something very similar to it. But it was exciting. I mean, if you just looked at the box score, you would have thought that was the Oklahoma State game from 3 months ago.
Yep.
Instead, it was arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL against arguably the greatest defensive mind in football. It was fantastic.
Like it was amazing. Now, he really couldn't. It's like one of the first times you've seen Belichick not really have an answer for something. I mean, usually he's able to go in, make adjustments, and they came out and they still scored, 19 points in the second half. Obviously, it wasn't. I mean, they scored 22 in the first, 19 in the second, so it's not like they had a huge, difference. But I mean, that was awesome. And also, you got the field goal kickers that couldn't make anything for the first quarter. You got 2 missed extra points and a missed field goal on the Patriots end. It's like, this is ridiculous. You just don't expect those things to happen on such a big stage,
Yeah, normally you'd expect those things to come back and kind of, play a big role down the stretch, but didn't really. It just came down to neither team could get a stop except for the Eagles at the end of the game.
Yep. So now that we are done talking about, the best team in football, finally getting our first win, our first ring. It's amazing. Feels awesome. After, we went down, me and a couple of my friends went down to City Hall to be in all the commotion. Some of the sights down there, I know you've seen some of the stuff. They took down the awning to the Ritz-Carlton. By standing on top of it, fell down. You had people running out there naked. A guy that decided he wanted to eat horse poop, which is ridiculous.
This is all Philly, man. This is all Philly.
I mean, I don't know at what point of the celebration you're like, you know what, man, I really want to eat this. I'm so excited about my team winning the Super Bowl. I think I should eat this poop.
That only happens in Philadelphia. I'll tell you that much.
I think the disrespect that the Eagles fans get needs to be over because there was a riot in Boston and 12 people were arrested. 12, Brian. And
12?
That has not even been mentioned anywhere. Let that have happened in Philly. That would have been front page news on ESPN.
in all fairness, the cops were celebrating with the fans, so it's not like they were going to arrest. They could have arrested every single person on the Ritz-Carlton that brought that thing down. They're just like, you know what? We're going to let y'all be great tonight. I don't feel like filling out the paperwork or arresting 600 people on the streets. Just, you know what? Y'all can have this night in the parade on Thursday. As long as you don't go beating each other up, I don't care.
Right. So about the parade, parade was pretty fun. Wasn't anything. I mean, it was obviously crazy. We went down there. They had 14 jumbotrons around like the parade route that was playing. To start, they were playing the Super Bowl. So by the time we got down there, it was probably like 10 o'clock. Parade started at 11, but they weren't getting to where we were until about 12:45. We were like right before the steps, so we got to see that. They, like I said, they played the whole Super Bowl. People were cheering again like they had never seen the Super Bowl happen. So all the big plays happened. They were just cheering. So that was fun. I mean, you could definitely tell like the energy in the city. I mean, obviously, the city will probably go back to being crazy in the next couple of weeks or so. But as of right now, everybody's still flying that high. I got a question for you. Do you think the Eagles can repeat?
I think they can. I mean, it'll be really interesting. I thought the team that would have given them the most trouble would be New Orleans. A lot of that's going to come down next year to whom gets home field. I think it also depends on who the Vikings end up with at quarterback. Granted, we saw Philly kind of run them out of the stadium, but that was a game that I think, if Keenum doesn't have those two turnovers, it might be a little bit different, and it just kind of snowballed on them. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the Saints and the Vikings are definitely the two teams in the NFC, though, that could give Philly some problems. And we've said this before. I mean, so many things kind of have to go right, even though the Eagles did suffer, a large amount of bad breaks. But it's so difficult to just have everything go right for you 2 years in a row. We saw that with Dallas this year. A key injury granted, I know Philly had a bunch of injuries, but, a couple injuries to a couple positions that you really can't afford to here and there. A couple games that were close don't swing your way. You don't get home field. It could be a lot different. Even as simple as, Julio Jones pulling down that catch and this whole run doesn't happen. So they can, definitely. Is it most likely? To win the Super Bowl, I'd say no. But I don't really see any teams that have a better roster in the NFC right now.
Yeah, they possibly could return 20 of their 22 starters. I mean, everyone but, Torrey Smith most likely won't be back. I think they're going to decide between Kendricks and Bradham, and I think Bradham's going to win that. I think they're going to try and trade Kendricks and then, re-sign Bradham to a deal that's kind of friendly this year, and then he gets, more of his money either up front or, in the years to come. I think the biggest problem they're going to have is, coaches being poached. As of just came out already, it looks like John DeFilippo is going to be the new offensive coordinator of the Vikings. So I think that'll be interesting to see how he goes there or what he does there. I just think that, coaches leaving is going to be the biggest problem. Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, former running back for the Eagles, is, supposed to be looked at for OC jobs, possibly the Giants.
Frank Reich and the Colts?
Yeah, I was going to say Frank Reich is getting a head coaching job interview for the Colts. And speaking of the Colts, how about what Josh McDaniels did to them?
That's terrible. I mean, it's pretty simple. He'll never get a head coaching job again unless he was promised by the Patriots. Yep. I mean, there's no way. No team's ever going to trust him.
Yep, his agent even said that. He was like, bro, I think you're making a terrible mistake. But, I mean, if he wants to be a head coach here soon, like, how do you turn that down? Like, I don't understand. Unless Bill Belichick told you, next year's my last year for certain, stamp it, mark it. Like, how many more years are you going to sit behind him in order to, get the shell of what used to be the Patriots?
Yeah, that had to be the scenario. Is Belichick told him, I got either 1 or 2 more years and then I'm leaving, and then and Kraft told him, you're going to be the next head coach. But even still, I mean, Tom Brady's going to be 41 years old, so you're not going to have him long term. They got rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, so there's really no backup at the quarterback position. And as we saw, that defense is so terrible. They don't really have any young talent. Their corners are okay, but they got exposed by Philly. So the Patriots post Brady really that appealing of a job compared to the Colts? I guess it comes down to how healthy Andrew Luck is, but
Yeah, I was about
that's
to say,
rough.
I don't think Andrew Luck has a shoulder. So,
Yeah, that might have been it too.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
If it wasn't for like a couple of terrible plays and Brady's record in the Super Bowl is 3-5 with a loss to the Seahawks if they just run the ball, and if the Falcons don't forget how to play football for the second half of the fourth quarter, what do you think his legacy would be?
Or if Vinatieri misses a field goal.
Yeah, any of those
Or
field goals.
or the tuck rule, is the thing.
It never even starts.
Or Spygate never happened. There's
Yeah.
a lot of asterisks around Tom Brady, and I think he gets a pass just because, those breaks have gone his way. But kind of similar to how they say in the NBA, it's a make or miss league. It's a matter of if you get it done or not. And in the NFL, I guess that all kind of gets overlooked. But I don't think he's the unquestioned GOAT that everyone seems to kind of slap on him just because of those things that you said. Like a lot of things that was out of his control had to break his way in order to win those 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he would still be up there, but he wouldn't be like head and shoulders like he's the GOAT. He would be talked about more like Peyton Manning is, where he is. He's a great quarterback, but always struggle, winning the big game. Obviously, having 3 Super Bowls is nothing to, cough at, but I think that, it would definitely be looked at a little bit differently. Or even if, Andy Reid didn't take 8 minutes to go down the field in the Super Bowl game where he was down 2 scores. But, that's besides the point.
That's trademark Andy Reid, though.
Yeah, this is true. But at that point, we didn't know that was his trademark. we were only about 4 years deep into the Andy Reid experience, so we were like, "Oh man, he just made this blunder. He's never, it's never gonna happen. Maybe the stage was too big for him." How about Jimmy G being the highest paid quarterback and only having 7 career touchdowns?
5 interceptions. that was his numbers this year. Everyone talks about, the Niners were undefeated. They just played significantly better. I hate this how the win and loss stat always gets thrown on the quarterback, because it's a team game. We've seen players like Rex Grossman and Trent Dilfer have gone to Super Bowls. You can't just evaluate someone on wins and losses, and he wasn't. He about 64, 65, I think, was his completion percentage, so that wasn't bad. They didn't really have any receivers or weapons for him, so I can give him a little bit of slack there. But 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions gets you 5 years, $137 million. That is absurd. That is outlandish.
That's ridiculous. He gets paid more than Matt Stafford, who at least has 1 million touchdowns to his name. And he gets paid more. He's the highest paid quarterback. That's ridiculous. I know Brady is he doesn't really care, but how do you look at that and it's just like, okay, this dude has whatever it is, like 14 career touchdowns or something like that. And he gets that kind of money. Kirk Cousins is sitting there like the cheesiest person in the history of the world, because that makes him know that he's at least going to get 140, at least.
Yeah. Then in the end, the 49, what else were they going to spend the cap on in free agency this year? So I guess, I don't know how the deal is structured. I haven't seen the details of it, how much is guaranteed, how much he gets in the first 3 years. But, man, I guess if you're going to spend money, you might as well spend it on who you think is going to be your franchise quarterback for the next 5 years. And he's going to hit free agency again when he's 31. This man could make $400 million.
That's just wild to think of. Oh, my God, that's ridiculous. But now we got some NBA trade deadline stuff. How do you feel about your Boston Celtics not making any moves?
Yeah, I have strong feelings on this. I was arguing with resident Harrisburg Boston superfan Mario Melger about why I wanted them to trade a first for Tyreek Evans, because the chances of you taking someone at 28th overall and them turning into a rotational player is the odds are just slim to none. I don't care if you have it under control for 4 years. We're seeing this with Gershon Yabusele. They took him 16th overall. He was a first round pick, and now they couldn't even trade him for Tyreek Evans. It's only been a year later. So, I mean, as soon as you attach a player to those picks, it loses almost all value. You stuck with guys like Ante Zizic, R.J. Hunter, Gershon, that, they sit on the end of the bench. They're just another number at camp. They don't do anything meaningful to the team. But I think there's a legit chance for them to get into the finals this year if they would have had Tyreek Evans coming off the bench as a distributor, a playmaker, and a scorer. But I guess they're just happy with Greg Monroe, and maybe Gordon Hayward's going to come back a little bit sooner than people think. I mean, that's the only reason I can think that you just sit there and be like, you know what? No, we're going to hold on to the 28th overall pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. The Sixers aren't necessarily in the same boat. I also wanted Tyreek Evans. I think they had some interest in him, but they wanted a first-round pick, and the Sixers aren't going to give up a first-round pick. It'll probably end up somewhere in the 20s. And like you said, you have a problem finding a rotational player, but I mean, we're not as close as the Celtics are, so we don't have that problem. It's not like we are going to go into a 7-game series and win too many of them with the top 3 teams in the East. So even if we did make it out the first round, in the second round we have to play one of those teams, and most likely we're going to be going home after a pretty good series. But I think that the Sixers made the right choice in not doing anything. But yeah, it was kind of curious to see that Boston didn't do anything either. But speaking about Boston and one of those trades, how about IT getting traded for a bag of peanuts? Dude was the centerpiece of a Kyrie trade, and just 4 months later or so, he is now traded to the Lakers for 2 rotational players and a rotational player and a guy that can jump high. Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, just goes to show if you don't mesh with LeBron, you're getting kicked out. I don't see how that trade makes Cleveland better this year. I don't see how it makes them better next year. If anything, Cleveland just helped Los Angeles free up enough cap space to sign LeBron James in free agency. So they might have just signed their own death wish there. Jordan Clarkson's not a great contract. He's making $11 or $12 million a year for the next 2 years. He's a okay bench scorer, but he can't really play defense. He's not a great playmaker. So, I mean, you just pretty much got a worse version of Isaiah Thomas, more expensive, and you got, like you said, a guy who can jump high. That's all he can do, is he can just run the floor, which I guess with LeBron and the pace that they want to play at, maybe that's okay. But my goodness, I don't see how this makes them any better.
I mean, the only thing it can help a little bit is, I guess, defensively. I mean, you don't have the liability in IT out there. Jordan Clarkson is not great defensively, but he at least gives you a little bit more length than IT does, because IT, when defending people, is like a chair.
Yes.
But I mean, that's one of the only things, and it's kind of funny, just I think it was yesterday he was like, I like it here. I don't want to be traded. And not even 24 hours later, he's traded.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting too, because I mean, he's not going to start for the Lakers when Lonzo's healthy, right? I mean, I guess they could have him start next to Lonzo.
He could be a 2.
But I mean,
all-time terrible defensive backcourt.
Yeah, and the Lakers, they're not going to re-sign him, right? So he's not part of their future plans. He could get bought out. He could get bought out and become a free agent. And would it not be the most Danny Ainge thing ever if Isaiah Thomas becomes a free agent and he signs with the Boston Celtics?
He wouldn't come back.
You don't think?
No, he does disrespect. It's almost as bad as if the Redskins was like, all right, we're going to give you $150 million, and Kirk was like, yeah, I'll come back. Nah, all bridges are burned. He's not coming back.
Well, here's the next, he made a big deal about wanting to get paid, which was probably one of his big downfalls. He was talking about Brinks truck and this and that. Who has money that's going to be able to pay him this offseason?
Who's going to want to pay him?
I mean, the teams are like the Sixers, no. The Hawks, no. The Kings, no. The Suns, no. I mean, it's all teams he's either played for or have just no interest in a player of his style. So
Mhm.
he might be one of those guys that has to sign a Tyreek Evans like contract, $3.3 million, and just be on the trade block again next season for someone that needs some bench scoring.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know about that.
And the Cavs had to give up their first round pick in this trade in a market where Tyreek Evans couldn't even net a first round pick. They had to trade a second team All NBA player, fifth and MVP podium from last year, and a first round pick to get Jordan Clarkson. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. I don't see how this is. They basically traded Kyrie Irving for Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance, and the Nets pick.
Yep, pretty much.
Like, that is surreal.
Absurd.
Absolutely.
Surreal,
And,
like the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. I'm sorry. I apologize. My bad.
And then they swung that 3-team deal where Dwayne Wade got traded for an 8th grader. I looked it up. It is a 2024 second-round pick. It is an 8th grader. So he got traded for an 8th grader. That's what Trey Burke got traded for.
You know how disrespectful that is? After, LeBron had all those videos this all season of them together, drinking red wine at his house, back with my brother, and then he just has him shipped off for an 8th grader.
You're gone. Yep, he's gone. And then they bring in George Hill, who's making $17 million a year for the next 2.5 years. And they bring in Rodney Hood, who hits restricted free agency. What the hell are they doing? If LeBron leaves, this team has, GOAT dumpster fire potential, and I cannot wait.
And no picks.
No picks. I mean, they have that Nets pick.
They have the Nets pick.
They traded a first for Kyle Korver. They traded a first for Channing Frye. They have no picks except for, and if the Nets finish 10th or 11th, it's not even a good first-round pick.
I was going to say that Nets pick isn't even that good. So something just came up on my phone. It says, Eagles never trusted Pats. Eagles ran fake walkthrough at Super Bowl practice in case Pats were watching.
That's probably why they had the edge. The Patriots were all on this fake material. They didn't know what was going on. It's
wait, that is not what they practiced.
It's in Waterboy when Bobby Boucher's team starts using plays that aren't in Coach's old green notebook binder, and he starts drawing them up in the dirt. That's exactly what it is. They didn't know what was going on.
Oh, man, that's funny. Well, yeah, as far as the Cavs go, I think that, they're going to be a struggle this year. It'll definitely be interesting to see, how the playoffs go. I know, LeBron usually turns it on come playoff time, and, they show a different team. They, can make stops, defensive stops when they need it. But as of right now, they're just giving up 130 points left and right. They want a buzzer beater game. I know it was in overtime yesterday, but they gave up 138 points to that time. They gave up 16 points to the Magic. They were up by 20 and then lost by 20.
Yep.
And it's insane. They defensively they are just terrible, and I don't know what happened. Where did all the defense go, or were they just playing over their head?
Well, they're an old roster. They were the oldest roster in the NBA. I'm not sure now, but they were an old roster, and George Hill was not good defensively this year. How much of that was because he played for the worst team in the NBA? I'm not sure. Rodney Hood is no defensive stopper in his own right. He has a tough time staying healthy. He's kind of a head case, too. I mean, remember about a month ago, he slapped the cell phone out of a fan's hand when he was walking off the court after getting ejected. So, this team, granted, they got rid of, the turnstiles of Isaiah Thomas and Derrick Rose in the backcourt, but they're still by no means good. They won't be Kings bad, but they'll still be pretty damn bad.
And they still have, K-Love who's coming back, and K-Love can't, do anything defensively either.
Well, at least Isaiah Thomas won't call him out anymore.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't have to worry about that. His little brother calling him out. His son, stop calling me out. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be, a very interesting Eastern Conference playoffs when it comes around that time, because they don't have, I don't know if they have the firepower anymore to get up there. And I know LeBron has done it for, a really long time and has been the only person to make it out the East for a really long time, but you might see a changing of the guard. Might get beat by his old backcourt friend. Or he could just get beat by the process. And then come to Philly, which would be dope.
I wouldn't mind a 3-6 matchup or a 2-7 matchup, Cavs-Sixers first round. don't mind that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. It would be interesting for 2 weeks until we beat y'all. Um, well, on the National Signing Day, we got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and then the Texas Longhorns coming in, and some places had Texas as high as number 3 for the top recruiting class. It's a couple people I'm interested in seeing this year. I'll let you get into all the guys you want to see and all that, but there's a couple of guys I'm interested in seeing. And one is Cameron Rising. He's a pocket quarterback from California. I think they need some new blood in that quarterback room. I'm not a big fan of Sam Ehlinger. I am a big fan of Shane Buechele, but he is limited, in some of the things he can do. But then the one guy that I'm really interested in is Corey Thompson, or Casey Thompson. He's a dual threat quarterback from Oklahoma, broke a whole bunch of Oklahoma records. I think it's going to be, real interesting to see how what Herman does with him, because he fits what he likes to do. He's that, guy that can throw and move. He's pretty fast, so I think it'll be interesting to see how he moves or how he moves up the depth chart, because they're both early enrollees, so they'll both be in camp for spring ball. Then you got B.J. Foster, who's the prized possession of the recruiting class, who was the number 1 safety in the nation for the second time in 3 years. They've gotten the number 1 safety in the nation. He'll get to go next to Brandon Jones, and take away or for the spot that Deshaun Elliott had. So it'd be interesting to see how he does back there. He's a physical guy, can come up and tackle, really good in coverage. He's also give you some threat on the offensive side, but obviously they're probably not going to use him on the offensive side. But on to your Fighting Irish. What you got for me, bud?
Well, before we get to Notre Dame real quick, I just want to talk about arguably the greatest recruiting class of all time. And that's not even like an overreaction. This Georgia recruiting class is terrifying. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
They got the number 1 dual threat quarterback, which between him and Sunshine going to Clemson, it's kind of pick which one you prefer, really. Yeah. But a lot of people say that he's got a lot of Cam Newton in him. He doesn't have the body of Cam Newton, but he's that dynamic dual threat guy who is an incredible passer. And then they got the number 1 running back. They got the number 2 defensive end, number 3 offensive tackle, the number 3 offensive guard, the number 1 offensive guard, the number 1 corner, the number 1 outside linebacker, the number 2 outside linebacker, which they flipped from Alabama, and then the number 3 running back. So they have 2 of the top 3 running backs, the top 2 outside linebackers. Their offensive line is fantastic. This team is going to be a significant problem going forward, especially a day when Alabama really struggled in terms of Alabama standards, only coming in 7th in a lot of the rankings. Georgia might be the new dog on – there's a stupid pun. The new dog on top of the SEC with just the amount of sheer talent that they signed.
So you're telling me that Georgia is going to be the next top dog?
They're going to be the next – I'm telling you right now, not this year or next, just because of Tua and the amount of freshmen that Bama had contribute this year. But in 2019, 2020, I don't doubt at all that they're going to be the best team in college football. And it might not even be close, really. And I don't think that's an overstatement at all, because this is like the second time Kirby Smart really put together a class. But this one is just jaw-dropping.
I'm about to say, and you get this, and you see that Kirby Smart's not scared to go with a new quarterback or a freshman quarterback. So Fromm better watch himself.
Oh man,
Brody
Fromm
is coming in.
Yeah, that is tough for Fromm, man. Mm-hmm. You take your team to the national championship, and you might not even be the starter next year.
Yep, sounds like Nick Foles. I'm sorry, no more Eagles.
And then lastly, just to wrap up with Notre Dame, they probably had the most fun and drama on National Recruiting Day with the Noah Boykin signing, 4-star corner out of D.C. He told his coach and his family that he was going to sign with Virginia. They relayed that message to all of the schools that were recruiting him, Notre Dame, Virginia, and Florida. So they were all under that assumption. And then when he was on the podium, he just changed his mind. Didn't tell anybody and put on the Notre Dame hat. sign the Notre Dame letter of intent and just send it in. So everybody, including his mom and head coach, were left with their jaw hanging on the floor. They signed an Under Armour All-American corner in DJ Brown, also from D.C. They're recruiting areas that they haven't really recruited before. They signed 27 guys, a lot of positions that normally you don't think of when it comes to Notre Dame, like a corner, defensive line, and wide receiver. So this team, it wasn't an elite class, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And they got the golden arm, Phil Dracovic, pride of Croatia, from Pittsburgh. Might start this year because we talked about how awful Brandon Wimbush and Ian Book are. So this could be a class that kind of shapes the next 4 years for Notre Dame in a big, big way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Just good thing that they don't have to play Texas, to start the season, because you know how that goes.
Well, it depends if Malik Zaire starts, because then it's a swift 45 to -10 beatdown.
They didn't have a quarterback. That's different. All right, bud. This is a good one. Make sure you don't, get too upset over the off season as I talk to you about how awesome my football team is, how many, this ring that we got, how nice it is to actually, witness your team win one. Not that you can say the same, being a Cowboys fan. So
I was 3 years old and I was watching the game on the TV.
Oh, you remember it?
Yep, like it was
Every
yesterday.
play. Oh,
down
okay.
in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, man, but yeah. All right, bud. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, see you, Sean.
All right, bye.